coming at you with another 10 cards from the Mean Streets of Gadgetzan. Backstreet Leper. It compares poorly to Wolf Rider on a good day where you're not blocked by taunts. Wolf Rider just gets in for 3 damage to face all the time and then you get a 3-1. And Wolf Rider isn't being played in any deck at all, when Wolf Rider could actually get buffed by cards like Flame Tongue Totem and Abusive Sergeant still. Backstreet Leper just sits there and probably does 2 damage after a turn. It can just get efficiently removed by a few classes for 1 mana, such as Druid, such as Mage. It's just very inefficient, and Designer Corner with Trump, I would have said Death Rattle deal 3 damage to the enemy hero. That would have been a-okay. Then it would compare to Wolf Rider. It would be like a slower Wolf Rider, but a more guaranteed Wolf Rider, because you don't get blocked by taunts. Anyways, that's so many words to say this is a card with no redeeming qualities, and no, don't say that I don't give aggro some love too. I feel like face decks, like pure face decks right now, are kind of in a weak spot because the mid-range decks are able to hold them back. So they need a little bit of loving, hopefully something that's not that brainless. Backstreet Leper isn't that thing. Meet the corrupted version of Acidic Swamp Ooze. It's poisonous Swamp Ooze. The battle cry is a little bit weaker, a lot weaker. Not actually that much weaker, actually, I will say. Battle cry remove 1 durability from your opponent's weapon. In the current metagame, it removes most of the weapons that Acidic Swamp Ooze removes. You know, I paused there for a long time as I thought about, wait, what weapons are in the current metagame? And it's actually just those 3. Fiery, War Axe, Gorehowl, and Spirit Claws. I was shocked for a moment and I was like, am I missing any? Yeah, there's True Silver Champion. Paladin isn't seen that often in top competitive play. Not to say that it hasn't been seen, but just commenting, wow, there's not that many weapons out there right now. Basically, why would you run Poisonous Swamp Ooze if you aren't already running 2 copies of Acidic Swamp Ooze? One small benefit is it's slightly bigger, so if your mana curve had very few 3s, for example, Poisonous Swamp Ooze would be decent. It's actually a decent arena card, but for constructed, no way. And our final neutral card is Bomb Squad. This is actually a really interesting minion in that it has a Battle Cry and a Death Rattle, and the Death Rattle is severely negative. I like these cards, which are slightly more complex. They've got a 5 mana 2/2. Obviously stats are low, so Battle Cry has to be amazing. Good news is Battle Cry is amazing, dealing 5 damage to an enemy minion. It compares very similar to Bomb Lobber, 5 mana 3/3, which dealt 4 damage to a random minion. So you're getting -1/-1, and you're getting +1 damage, which is targeted. You'd most likely want to put in 5 mana removal, which can't go to face, in a control deck, and a control deck can't really afford to deal 5 damage to itself. So I don't believe it passes the card is good by itself in a vacuum test. That said, it's not that far off if you somehow can ignore the Death Rattle. Where the Bomb Squad kind of is very interesting is as a very specialized tech card against exactly Sylvanas. They play Sylvanas on an empty board. You play Bomb Squad, deal 5 damage to the Sylvanas, they steal Bomb Squad, and then they will face the Death Rattle of Bomb Squad eventually. That's kind of cool, but a very, very narrow usage for Bomb Squad. Sure, you can do interesting things like playing the Bomb Squad and then Shadow Stepping it, or shuffling it back into your deck. I don't think it'll see much play. In Arena, though, this card's going to be really good. In a world where Bomb Lobber is extremely good, I'm sure you can afford the 5 damage to your hero for the tempo gain from dealing 5 damage to an enemy minion while also getting a 2/2. Whenever I say a card will definitely be good in Arena, I'm like, am I sure it's not going to be just generally good and constructed? I think in this case, probably not, but it's not that far away, I will say that. A lot of Mage cards got revealed. We've got Kabal Lackey, a really big synergy card actually. It's Kieran Tor's Mage, little brother. 1 mana 2/1 is a okay stat line, but the big benefit is it gains you 3 mana since the next secret costs 0. So you can actually play a secret on turn 1, which sounds amazing, but I think isn't actually that amazing because there are no great Mage secrets to play on turn 1. The Effigy isn't that good played with the Kabal Lackey because you get a random 1-drop. Vaporize has never really been good, though if it's for free, it's kind of tempting, a little bit. Spellbender, that one, similar to Counterspell, might actually be one of the good ones to get since casting a spell on a minion. That happens sometimes. It's kind of like counterspell in the case that they try to cast Lightning Bolt. Sometimes it grabs their buff. Ice Block is a good one, but it's not a tempo one. It's like very anti-tempo. So is Ice Barrier. They're just there to keep you alive, so they don't really gain you an advantage when you play them. And Mirror Entity is another interesting one, but if you get the secret out that early, you're going to copy a very early game minion. Mirror Entity, their Babbling Book. You can Mirror Entity their Kabal Lackey, for example. Even if you do that, though, that's pretty decent tempo. 1 mana, get 2/2/1s, not too bad. And that's like the worst case nightmare on a common scale. The effect looks amazing, but if you compare it to Kirin Mage, it has the exact same text. And Kirin Mage didn't see any play at all. Why? Is it because the effect isn't strong enough? And I think that's the case. Because one, requires you to already have the Mage secret in your hand, and Mage secrets aren't that powerful. Perhaps where this card sees the most potential, though, is getting out a secret and then following it up with Medivh's Valet. 1 mana, 2/1 Kabal Lackey, 2 mana Medivh's Valet, deal 3 damage along with your 2 mana 2/3. That's a pretty good start. The main question is, what secret are you running in that deck? Now, I actually did play a Tempo Mage with Ice Block, and Kabal Lackey might just fit into that deck. But you'd have to get both the Kabal Lackey and the Ice Block. Are you going to keep both in your opening hand? That's pretty rough, and you need Medivh's Valet. You just don't open the game with that many cards. So therefore, I see the effect as powerful, but just not that strong. And if you compare it with Mad Scientist, since that actually had a similar effect, you might look at that and wonder, wait, that card was all over the place. Why is that card so good? The answer is because it didn't require the secret to be in your hand. Just imagine how incredible Mad Scientist was. It was basically draw a card, which is a secret, and play it immediately for 0. And it turns out that if you add draw a card to any card, it turns out to be really good. Whereas Kabal Lackey, FX certainly looks very strong, but it has precedence with Kirin Mage as not being as strong as it looks. Potion of Polymorph is the Mage secret this expansion. I'm assuming there's only going to be one. Maybe they'll surprise me with another one. Polymorph, discounted as a secret. The main problem is you can't count on Potion of Polymorph hitting a good card from their side. This card suffers from the same effect of Mirror Entity, in fact, because they'll just assume it's Mirror Entity, the secret that you've played. And playing around Potion of Polymorph and playing around Mirror Entity is much the same way. You don't want to play a good minion into the Mirror Entity, similar to how you don't want to play a good minion into Potion of Polymorph. This effect is very similar to the Repentance, which is only 1 mana. This has a few advantages over it in that it stops constant effects, and ultimately, the 1 mana discount that you get from Polymorph just doesn't seem quite good enough. Yes, it has some advantages over some Polymorph, since it affects immediately. Like, you can't really have Polymorph stop their Gadgetzan Auctioneer from drawing a bunch of cards, or their Malygos from doing a bunch of damage. Potion of Polymorph can do that, but it can also just trigger Babbling Book and then do nothing. I suppose in the right meta, where no one is playing low-cost minions, if such a meta existed, like, okay, I can see some goodness out of Potion of Polymorph, but ultimately, those cases are very edge, and I wouldn't run it. Cabal Crystal Runner. People looked at this card and compared it with Thing from Below, and were like, wow, that is a serious card. Have they not learned anything from Thing from Below? Thing from Below, arguably one of the strongest cards that Hearthstone has ever seen. Cabal Crystal Runner shares the same kind of concept, where it costs 2 less for each secret you've played this game, so it doesn't even have to be in your hand. Now, the main difference between this card and Thing from Below is that it encourages you to play cards that see no play whatsoever, whereas you always saw totems. Shamans always pressed their hero power. They always played Flame Tongue Totem. They would always play Totem Golem. That is to say, Thing from Below gets a lot of cost reduction just by the natural way that you play. Which is why I actually like Cabal Crystal Runner. Yes, you can play a 0 mana 5/5, but to do so requires a lot of work. And you can argue Freeze Mage plays 4 secrets. They play Ice Barrier and they play Ice Block, but they also don't play very many straight up good minions. For example, they don't play Arcane Giant. which is possibly a 0 mana 8/8 in their deck. The reason is they're not in the business of playing minions. They can render the opponent's removal useless. That's an advantage. So you don't really want to be playing a 0 mana 5/5 in that deck. So where do you want to be playing this? You want to be playing it in a secret deck. But are there any secret decks out there right now? Well, certainly there is an attempt to make secret decks a little bit more viable with a card like Kabal Lackey. It seems like these two cards go hand in hand. Hand in land. We have Medea's Valet, who triggers off secrets. Medea's Valet is actually really powerful on the secret effect, and this is really powerful too. A 0 mana 5/5 is great. The main problem is I don't think mages have gotten enough good secrets that you would be willing to play on 3 mana without cheating them out somehow. In a tempo way. Like in a freeze way, yeah, Ice Barrier and Ice Block, those are pretty good. Tempo Mage has previously played Mirror Entity and Counterspell, but that's because you get them out for free with Mad Scientist. They have not played those cards ever since. Well, Counterspell actually every so often. So currently I don't think the card is that good. Perhaps if mages get an actually good secret, then this card and the entire mage archetype of a secret deck might come together. In Arena, it's an overcosted 6 mana 5/5. Unless you happen to have a lot of secrets, then it's 4 mana 5/5, which is decent. Here's a big one, Inkmaster Solia. Wow, this card is going to really crank up the Reno Mage archetype. So, the battle cry, if your deck has no duplicates, the next spell you cast this turn costs 0. Now that's a good 0 mana 5/5. Of course, it has the drawback that you have to play a deck with no duplicates, but it's possible that mages will have enough cards, especially with this expansion. It's the biggest Reno set for expansion, the biggest standard pool that you can pull out for a while. So naturally, there's going to be the most options for cards so that you don't necessarily have to put in duplicates. You just put the second best card, which will often be close enough. It's possible to put together a competent 30-card deck. It just wasn't quite that strong. Inkmaster Solia has such an insane effect that it could be the case. And perhaps if we see just a few more good cards and or just a few more cards with the if your deck has no duplicates effect. With those 7-cost spells, Inkmaster Solia is actually a 0 mana 5/5, which you can play on 7. And you don't have to play it as a 0 mana 5/5. You can discount your Fireball, that's not too bad, then it's a 3 mana 5/5, and you play your Fireball. Where she gets really insane is you play her on 7, having played Kazakus on a turn earlier and chosen the 10 option. Then you're actually boosting out your 10 drop on 7, which means not only is it a 0 mana 5/5, it's a 0 mana 5/5, which gained you 3 mana. And the potion from Kazakus is bound to be very powerful if you chose the 10-cost option. I'm feeling like the Reno Mage Value Mage deck. We're going to see that attempted at least. And Inkmaster Solia, of course you're going to put that in a deck with no duplicates. This card, fantastic. Exactly the type of effect you want to be rewarded with for playing a deck with no duplicates. And here's some Warlock cards. Got Bloodfury Potion. It's very similar to Demon Fire, which either gives a demon +2/+2 or deals 2 damage. This one either gives you +3 attack, or if it's a demon, +3/+3. It's really bad Blessing of Might, and Blessing of Might doesn't see that much play. The reason why the Warlock cards are traditionally bad is because the Warlock hero power of Life Tap is extremely good. But did you know that Demon Fire was actually played at the World Championships 2016 by Theiss in Zoo? If Demon Fire is being played, Bloodfury Potion is not that far off. Demon Fire +2/+2 on a demon, benefit that you can just do 2 damage. The flexibility is actually key to that card. 3 mana, give a minion +3/+3 is actually not bad. Blessing of Kings is 4 mana +4/+4, and +3/+3 for Warlock, therefore not too bad. I don't think this card will pull people into playing demon decks. It's not strong enough to be oh, now I want to play a demon deck. But if a demon deck were to become good, maybe you see Bloodfury Potion in there. Maybe. Seadevil Slinger. 4 mana 4/2 is obviously incredibly bad stats. It is a Murloc, and the battle cry, the next Murloc you play, costs health instead of mana. Well, this effect is actually really strong, paying health instead of mana. We didn't really see it in Cho'Gall, but that's because there were no great Warlock spells. Whereas Murlocs are something that you can just play proactively. You can play your Murloc War Leader and save 3 mana, and you just pay 3 health. That's not too bad. If you get both of these out, then that's actually pretty strong. I can't emphasize how strong the battle cry is, though, because paying health instead of mana is really good. And there's a few good Murlocs out there. You play War Leader, you play Seer. Those are worth the 3 mana. Binja, really worth it, actually. You go ahead and play it for free. You cheat out a 5 mana card, which is actually powerful enough. The main problem is Seadevil Stinger's stats are about worth 2 mana. Warlock Murloc decks often played many Murloc cards together, though, so it's not that bad if you play this 2 mana worth value on 4, along with a Coldlight Seer, which is effectively spending 5 mana, or with a Murloc War Leader, which is also effectively spending 5 mana. I think that this card makes Murloc Warlock a little bit more viable. It moves in that direction. It's a good card for that deck. A very interesting direction, so I like the card. And finally, if you like Dragonfire Potion, you'll love Felfire Potion. Well, sometimes. It's kind of in the same realm of card. That is some really powerful AoE, dealing 5 damage to all characters, similar to the Dragonfire Potion for the Priest, dealing 5 damage to all minions, all non-dragon minions. Felfire Potion is a little bit worse, because you would usually put in a control deck. It's kind of the same reason why Hellfire, it's Hellfire's bigger brother, is a little bit worse than traditional AoE, because it deals damage to all characters. That includes heroes, and if you're playing a control deck, you usually would rather both sides not get dealt damage. That said, I think it's still a very powerful AoE effect, and I would have loved to run this card in a Reno Jackson deck, and it will certainly see play in a Reno Jackson deck, I think. I appreciate how powerful AoE is becoming. That this card is far better than Twisting Nether, I think, and might push Twisting Nether out of the Reno deck as a better AoE card. And AoE is actually exactly what's necessary to de-seat some of the mid-rangey shaman decks that have been running rampant over the meta as of late. So I'm really enthusiastic about the card. It's great. It's going to be especially good alongside that new Warlock card, Abyssal Enforcer. It feels like Warlock kind of needs Reno Jackson in order to offset this deal damage to yourself with Felfire and with Abyssal Enforcer, and with Life Tap, of course. After Reno Jackson rotates out, I'm not sure what they'll do, but that's a problem for future me and future you. For now, enjoy these very efficient AoE cards from Warlock.
Now who's got the upper hand?